Thank you so much, and congratulations on your film makeup. I was wondering if you could tell us what it was like sharing it with a live audience for the first time and coming to the festival.
It was great. We've had 2 screenings now, and both of them were fantastic. The second one, we had loads of questions from the audience. The premiere was like mostly my friends and family, so it was quite quiet, or people who'd worked on the film that already knew it. So the second one was really exciting in that I got to understand what people were making of the film, what they were thinking about during the film, how they'd understood it, because it's a complex story. It was, for me, that was the first time I'd done it with an audience because it was our world premiere, so it was really exciting.
And can you talk a bit about developing the story idea, like where you got it from and how that sort of transformed into what we've seen on the screen?
Yeah, so the story started out as a short film, and it was a very simple short, and I took it to this like incubator scheme thing, which was a week long. And I arrived there and we'd all read each other's work, all the writers and directors there. And this guy came up to me and he had like a very specific reading of my film, and I disagreed with him entirely and didn't speak to him for the rest of the week because I thought he was a total weirdo. Anyway, like 2 years passed and things changed in my own life, and I realised that he was totally right. And I found that very interesting, so I went back to the short story and started developing it. The film is a lot about the unconscious and repressed desires, so it kind of that was what intrigued me about it, that I was able to write something that was true in my life, but just on a very unconscious level. So yeah, that's partly what the film looks at.
And can you tell me about your casting process and how you got all your actors on board and going into production looked like?
So I work with casting director Olivia Scott Webb, who just won an Emmy for Fleabag. And I sent her, she's worked on all my projects, and so I sent her a really early script, and she immediately sent me back a link to 3 Girls, the BBC show which stars Molly Windsor, and said she thought of, as she was reading it, she thought of Molly instantly. And then like a year or so passed and we started the casting process properly, and we saw like 200 girls. But Molly just rose to the surface. Like the first time I saw her casting tape, I could totally imagine her as Ruth in the story. And then when I met her, it was very clear that she went about her process of sort of understanding the character from a place of sort of feeling and emotion, and she was working kind of from the inside out. So I thought that would work very well with our film, and I just loved her kind of the raw, honest sort of truthfulness of her performance. And then after that, we cast the rest of the characters in quite a sort of normal way. Joseph Quinn came in and gave a fantastic audition, and then we chemistry cast him with Molly, and the 2 of them worked really well together. And Stefanie was interesting because she came in and auditioned, and when she came in the first time, she was playing a makeup artist, or at least someone who's interested in makeup, and she came in with tons of makeup on and nails and like very dressed up, and I found it quite hard because that wasn't how I'd envisaged the character, and she, I think, felt the room that something wasn't quite right. So on her way out, she sort of asked to come back the following day and do another audition, which I thought was very brave. And in that, she gave like a really original new take on the character, which was unlike any of the other auditions that we'd had. and that originality like remained throughout the whole shoot.
Something that I think is so wonderful in your film is the location that you have and how it provides this like really intense natural backdrop to this psychological story, and as well the sort of plastic wrapped caravans. I was wondering if you could talk about finding that location, or if you knew that's where it was going to be set when you were writing.
Yeah, I mean the short story that it came from was set in a foreign place, and it was quite important to me that this character was feeling kind of isolated or out of her kind of known community. So I knew it had to be remote. And then when I had the idea of a caravan park, it just seemed to fit because it can be its own community. And particularly, I felt that the architecture was very symbolic of the film. It's a film really about a character finding herself and looking deep inside herself. And it takes place, if it takes place amongst these sort of identical, prefabricated caravans, I felt there was something kind of interesting in that visually. And that caravan parks can be set, you know, they're this very ordered environment in this wild, natural place. So again, that kind of spoke to the journey that she goes on, and which part of herself she should be listening to, and whether she's brave enough to kind of go out of that ordered, conventional life. And also it's like a maze, it can be like a maze, so we use that as a sort of labyrinth through the film.
Especially getting down into the water. And did you look to any specific filmmakers for your visual vocabulary for the film, or what influences were you drawing from?
Yeah, we looked at a lot of photographers, a lot of photographs by an American photographer called Todd Hiddo, and he photographs sort of suburbia in this sort of twilight, gloaming light. So he was a big reference. Also Bill Henson for the portraiture. We didn't look at that many other films. We did look at Jessica Hausner's Hotel. It has such a strong sense of atmosphere, and it's quite open-ended like our film, and sort of leaves a lot for the audience to fill in. And it, in a similar way, follows sort of one girl in this quite enclosed space. She's got her film at the festival, her new film at the festival. So I met her, which was great, and was a kind of fangirl talking about Hotel. But no, I think those were our main references. And just other images, like Stefan Zweig's Fear novella was a big reference, and there were some images in his prose that I sort of was interested in sort of shooting, so some of those sort of filtered into the film as well.
What were the major challenges, do you feel, from the short film work that you've done to creating a feature on set?
The gap between short film
that
and
jump,
feature
or was
film.
it kind of fluid?
It wasn't fluid. It was kind of a long. By the time I got on set for makeup, I hadn't been on set for I think 5 years, 4 or 5 years, and that time was really spent learning how to write. And I was on Torino Lab for a year, writing a totally different story. And was developing that, and then this idea kind of came through, which ended up being a sort of, it just ended up going first. So yeah, it was a sort of strange period where you're sort of constantly striving and thinking about what's next. But it was also very fertile in that I did a lot of writing and I had a lot of ideas at that time. In some ways, I guess you feel very free. It feels quite different now, going back to writing again, because I've kind of put a stake in the ground of certain things I'm interested in. It's like, how far can I veer from that? And whereas in between shorts and features, I sort of felt very free, partly because no one was really reading my work or looking at stuff. So yeah, but it's a long journey that you have to sort of keep your faith in yourself. And I think in that period it's important to have people, a good community around you to sort of keep you going in those moments.
And when you're working on a project, do you feel like you work on sort of 5 at once and you see which one is moving forward? I'm kind of probing to ask like what you're doing next. Are you working on something specific, or are you figuring out?
Yeah, I'm working on 2 feature projects simultaneously, although I'm not writing one of them. So really I'm just writing one thing, but it's quite nice to have a couple of other things bubbling away. I like that cyclical thing because you can get a bit of perspective on your own writing when you've been away from it for a bit. So yeah, those 2 projects. Plus I'd love to get some TV work. I'm quite interested in that, partly because it'll get me back on set quicker. I don't really want it to be another 5 years before I get back on set. So we'll see. And one of my projects is with the same producer, Emily Morgan, again. So that's a really nice sort of pair teamwork that we have together.
And finally, what is it about a project, or maybe thematically, that says, yes, I want to do this, I have to tell this story? Like, what pulls you in?
I don't know. I mean, that's the question I'm sort of struggling with at the moment. I seem to be drawn to projects that have a sort of genre hybrid element to them. With makeup, it's very much about describing the inner life of a character. So to do that, I wanted to use, parts of the film are very naturalistic, but I wanted to also use a more surreal language. Some people call it genre, to sort of describe her fears and fantasies and the sort of tumultuous unconscious life that she had, and that sort of psychological and sort of genre hybrid stuff seems to be the stories that I'm drawn to. And yeah, so
cool. Well, thank you. Congratulations on your film, and I'm excited to see what you do next.
Thanks.